So today we're going to work on two things. The first thing we're going to work on is skip counting by numbers. And the first number we're going to work with is the number 5. We're going to be skip counting from 5 to the number 50. Okay? So that's where we're going to go. So when you skip count, you start with this number and you end up with this number, but each time you're counting in between. So the first number we're using is 5. So if I count up 5, from 5, I wind up with 6, 7, 8, 9, 1, 2, 3, 4. The next number would be 10. Same thing, 1, 2, 3, 4. My next number, 11, 12, 13, 14, would be 15. Then my next number would be 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Each time I'm adding 5. 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, and 50. That's how you would do it. But let's dig a little deeper here and look at some things about skip counting by 5 and ask ourselves, what's a way that I can do this without drawing those dots or using my hand? Because my hand has 5 fingers. I could use that to skip count and go 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I could do that too. So watch what we do here. I'm going to list all of those skip countings from 5 to 50. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, and 50. And I tried to line them all up in place value order like we talked about yesterday, where we have a ones digit right here and then we have a tens digit. If we look at these numbers in the ones digit column, I go from 5 to 0, 5 to 0, 5 to 0, 5 to 0, 5 to 0. And even if I use my hands, I start with the number 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 is a 0. And then I start with 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I'm now at 15. So if we look, every time we skip count by 5, we either go from a 5 in the ones column to a 0 in the ones column. 5 in the ones column, 0, 5, 0, 5, 0, 5, 0. So that's one thing you have to understand. When we skip count by 5s, we're skip counting by 5s. Here I have one hand that has 5 fingers. But if I put 2 hands, how many fingers do I have now? 10. So every time you skip count by 5, your ones digit will either be in a 5 or a 10. Okay? So let's move on to the next type that we would skip count by. And that would be skip counting by 10, which we did adding 10 yesterday. We plus 10 to everything yesterday. Here I have the number 10. If I'm going to skip count by 10 more, my next number would be 20. Now let's look at this before we move on to the next number. Let's say I want to go from 10 all the way to the number 100. Okay? Look at my ones digit column again, just like yesterday. It stays the same, 0 and 0. And that makes sense because if we think about skip counting by 5, we go from 5 to 10. But now we're at 10. So every time we have 10 fingers. 10, 20. That's right, 30 would be the next one. I'm not changing anything in the ones column. 5 is a number that we would find in the ones column, right? 5 falls between the number 1 through 9, where 10 is after 9, which means it's a 10. So the ones column doesn't change when we skip count by tens. So the next one, let's think to ourselves. The next number, 10, 20, 30, 40. Just the tens digit is changing. Okay? The ones digit isn't changing when I'm skip counting by 10. Let me erase this right here and I'm going to put a plus 5 right here because that's what we're doing. And right here we're doing a plus 10. The next one would be, let's think. 10 more plus 40 would be That's right, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and then we would get to 100. But that brings us to our next part. What if we had to skip count by 100? Here I have plus 100. And just because I'm adding one more digit, because that's all I'm doing, we're going over one more place and place value, it doesn't make it harder to add together. We just have to realize that we're looking at the place value digit, and we can be able to skip count fairly quickly just using that strategy. So if I'm going to plus 100, I'm clearly going to start with the number 100. So the next 100 that I would come to, if I added one more 100 to 100, would be 200. Once again, the place value, or the digit number, is so important here. The ones digit, I'm not adding anything to the ones digit. The tens digit, I'm not adding anything to the tens digit. But the hundreds digit, I'm adding something to. So now let's ask ourselves, if I add another 100, what's really going to change here? Is the ones digit going to change? No, because I'm not adding any ones. Is the tens digit going to change? No, because I'm not adding any tens. But I'm adding another 100. So if I add 1 to 2, I now have 300. The next 100 would be 400. The next 100 would be 500. The next 100 would be 600. The next 100 would be 700. 800, 900, finally to 1,000. That's how I'm going to move forward with skip counting. Fives, tens, and 100s. And it's all about the place value that the number falls in. This is in the ones digit, this is the tens digit, this is the hundreds digit. Alright, so let's look at the next thing that we want to look at today. And the next thing we want to look at is our number families with subtraction. If I'm going to use my number families to help me with subtraction, there's a couple key things that I have to remember. If I have a number family, and I have numbers that look like this, I know right off the bat I'm missing a small number, because the small numbers stay on the arrow line. The big number is always after the arrow line. Here I'm missing a small number, and if you're missing a small number, remember, the word small starts with S. And so does the fantastic word subtraction. They both start with S, so if I'm missing a small, I'm going to subtract. But when I subtract, I always need to remember that I start with my big number. My big number here is 10. So if I'm going to rewrite this problem, unlike the number family way we write it, I would start with 10, and since I'm going to subtract because I'm missing a small number, small, subtraction, I'm going to use the number 8. Then I'm just going to subtract. The number that's missing is 2. That's where this number would go. Usually in our workbook, we have the problem like this, and then there is a line right here. You would write this problem like this, because you use subtraction to find your missing number. You didn't use addition, so you wouldn't write, because that's not what you did to solve. So no, use the problem that you used to solve to write on that line. Let's try another one. Okay, remember we're doing subtraction. Ooh, I erased my fantastic way to remember when I do subtraction with a number family. Once again, here's the line, big number. Okay, I'm missing a small number, so I subtract. Remember, small starts with S, subtraction starts with S. I'm missing a small number, so I'm using subtraction. And in my workbook, it might look like this with that line underneath to write my equation. So first I start with the big number. I know I'm missing a small number, so I'm going to subtract. And if I subtract 12 minus 6, I get 6. Remember, you're not going to, if this is how you solved it, doing subtraction, you won't write on this line 6 plus 6 equals 12. That's not how you solved it. You solved it this way. Okay? For right now, we're done with our video today. But you're going to be working on some problems on a worksheet that deal with skip counting by 5, 10s, and 100s and subtracting number families using our SRA math concept strategies.